On December the 29th at 12 o'clock, Clemson plays the Kentucky Wildcats on ESPN. Yeah, Gator Bowl. Yeah, there we go. Who is Kentucky? Like really, who are they? I'm going to dive into that and more. Welcome to Clemson Football Live. I'm Brian. I'm glad that you're here. If you're new here, welcome, friends. I hope you subscribe. And if you've been watching for a while, you haven't subscribed, I hope you subscribe. It's free, and it is the easiest way to support the channel. I do appreciate it. So the news comes out. We're playing Kentucky. I know about their running back. I know about Devin Leary because we had to play against him at NC State. But who is the Kentucky Wildcats? Now, Mark Stoops has been the coach there since about, 2012? And one of the things you need to know about Kentucky, they had a 10-3 season in 2018. They had a 10-3 season in 2021. I think they beat Penn State in the Citrus Bowl. Now, Kentucky is not an easy job. It's not Vanderbilt, but it's not an easy job. You have to go out and play Georgia. You have to play Tennessee. You have to play the artist formerly known as Florida. So it's not necessarily the easiest job in the world. Pause there. Here's a public service announcement to Kentucky viewers. If you're a Kentucky fan and you're watching me, I want to go ahead and tell you, if you don't know me, I take the gloves off on my own team when needed, so you're not exempt. So if you're going to get upset, just remember this is the same guy that in the Clemson community, just because Dabo's cooking it doesn't mean that I'm eating it and liking it. I like to call myself a fan, not a cult member. So I'm going to tell the truth as I see it. Be offended as you may or may not be. Kentucky is one of those teams that at the beginning of almost every college football season, they get about 4 games in and all the talking heads on the Saturday morning shows are losing their mind over Kentucky. Boy, what's going on in Lexington? And you get about a few more games. Other than those 2 really good seasons, 10-3, that's a good season, especially the division they're in 2018 and 2021. Other than that, it's 7-6 city. What's going on in Kentucky? Oh, they're content. 7-6, 7-5, 8-5. Now, since Stoops really got to go, and other than 2020, and I mean, come on, y'all, 2020 is just a wash. I don't even like to bring it up. They were 5-6 then, but come on. Let's not be overly hard on people. Kentucky has consistently shoved down our throats that they're going to be in the month of September. By at the end of September, they're always being touted as this great talent that is a beacon of light in college football, only for the end of October to roll around and realize it was just a talking point. If I was Kentucky, I would beg them to please stop. Please don't do this anymore. This is annoying. Now, let's talk about the Kentucky Wildcats. Ray Davis is their running back. Now, initially, back on December the 3rd, I believe it was one of those local Lexington papers said that he had opted out, that he was not going to play. And then I looked again, and Ray Davis is actually going to play in the Gator Bowl. Now, if something has changed in the last 23 seconds, please someone tell me. But they have a few players who's hit the transfer portal. They have a few players who's opting out of this game. They're not going to play. But that's common for everyone. Clemson, on the other hand, has Jeremiah Trotter and Nate Wiggins. They've declared for the draft. They're not going to play. That is a big loss for us. We've had a bunch of players hit the transfer portal. I think, about 6 players right off the top of my head. So both teams are down some players, guys that goes out there and gets reps. And that's something to be considered across the board. In fact, when the line opened, Clemson was a 7-point favorite. Clemson's now a 4.5-point favorite. So as we've inched closer to the game, Kentucky has picked up some steam here. But who is Kentucky? Let's look at their schedule. I would share the schedule on the screen, But I am not doing that right now. Why? Because sometimes when I share some screens, if there's any audio on it and maybe I can't see it, it will still play through, and I really don't want to do that to you. I'm going to auctioneer this one off. Now, listen to me. Remember what I said. Remember what I said about how the media beefs up Kentucky in September. They always do it. And you can't blame Kentucky for saying, hey, I'm glad everybody's talking about us. September, they played Ball State. They beat them. They played Eastern Kentucky. They beat them 28-17. They played Akron. They beat them. They played the Nerds of Vanderbilt. They beat them 45-28. Let's pause there. I don't blame these guys, considering the second half of their schedule, for playing easier games at the beginning to get their feet under them. That's one philosophy that I've changed over the years. Why? Because college football does not have a preseason. So I don't have a problem with that, because the second half of their schedule is rough. So keep that in mind. They played Florida. They beat the crap out of Florida. That was fun to watch. That was fun to watch. Kentucky, I laughed on that one. Then you play Georgia at Georgia. Let's pause there. That is a tough place to play. 51-13. I thought y'all would play them a little better. I'm just being transparent. After last year, I know that was a different team, different quarterback, but I felt like y'all would have played them better. You didn't. You play Missouri. Missouri just had an up year this year. Okay. Missouri, I'm still trying to figure out this whole thing with Drinkwitz or whatever his name is. I'm trying to figure him out, you know? So they beat you. You played Tennessee. Tennessee beat you by 6 points. And I want to give credit where credit's due. Ray Davis rushed for 280 against Florida. He rushed for 128 yards against Missouri. For the rest of the season, he didn't break 100 yards after that. He only broke 80 yards after that one time, after that 128-yard rushing game against Missouri. I don't know if he had injuries, but we'll just keep going there. So you lost to Tennessee. You beat Mississippi State, as you should. You lost to Alabama. Don't blame you there. You lost to South Carolina at South Carolina. This is the SEC. Listen, you talk to me about Georgia. You talk to me about Tennessee. You talk to me about Alabama. I buy it. You lost to South Carolina. Now let's talk about Louisville. And I'm trying to make this fast because I want to talk more about the team. I got a bunch of people in here. I hope everyone is doing well. See a bunch of you people in here. Hello to you all. I hope you've all subscribed and hit the thumbs up. I'll get to that in just a second. Thank you all for joining me. But let's talk about that South Carolina game. 17-14, not impressive. Davis only rushed for 61 yards. I can promise you that Clemson's defense, even missing Jeremiah Trotter, even missing Nate Wiggins, Clemson is a lot better defense in South Carolina. I can promise you. Everybody's looking at Clemson and go, wow, Clemson had a down year this year. Clemson's defense is still like number 6 in the country. They are very tough to play. So you get to Louisville. Okay, here's the big talking point for Kentucky Louisville fans. Now let's remember, Clemson fans, that Kentucky and Louisville, they hate each other. Or as some commentator says, Louisville. Sounds like a drunk old man. Louisville. You beat Louisville 38-31. They'd only lost one game all season. But let's talk about that Louisville team for a second. First of all, you beat your rival. They seemingly can't beat Stoops. But if you look at Louisville's record, and then you look at who they played, the only good team they played in the regular season, I'm not talking about the conference game, which, by the way, that was bad, but I'll get on that in a second. Louisville did not play Clemson. They did not play Florida State in the regular season, and they did not play North Carolina. They beat Notre Dame, and that was great. That was a fun game. That was wonderful. But once they got past that Virginia Tech game, As someone said recently, some teams has gas for 10 games, but they have to play 12. So the car runs out of gas after game 10. Louisville is one of those teams because if you go and you look at the Virginia game, they barely beat a bad Virginia team. Virginia's bad. They're terrible. They did beat Miami. Miami is one of those teams that they still have some talent there. They can still be a problem. And then they lost to y'all. And then that same Louisville team played a Florida State team who had a freshman quarterback who threw for only 53 yards. It was an ugly game. Florida State couldn't move the ball on Louisville, but Louisville, with their starters that I know of, I don't think anyone significant was out, still couldn't move the ball on Florida State. Florida State had to go to Wildcat formation to beat them in the ACC championship. It was a real yawner. So, yes, you did beat Louisville. And, yes, Louisville was ahead of Clemson this year. You are right. But Louisville didn't play Florida State in the regular season, didn't play Clemson, and didn't play North Carolina. Brian Brom did a great job. Congrats to him. I am impressed with what he's done. But don't think that taking down Louisville was like taking down fill in the blank with some good team. Because I think that Louisville was much improved, but they were not great. The only reason they ended up in the conference championship is because of the new alignment. And that's the new alignment. There we go. So let's talk about their defense. Kentucky is ranked number 43 overall on defense. Let's talk about offense. I'm just going to give you the rankings. I mean, I know there's all these things like, red zone defense, fumbles recovered, bounced off the ground, fumbles recovered off of someone's back, the circumference of the left tackle's nose. I'm not going to go into all that. If you want to go look into all that, you go do that. You have fun with that. I'm not doing that. Kentucky's defense is ranked, Kentucky's offense is ranked number 98. That's their offense, ranked number 98. So Kentucky's not doing that much on offense. And if you go and you look at Leary's numbers, Leary threw for 2,440 yards. That was out 193 out of 343. He threw 10 interceptions this year, 23 touchdowns. As I said, Ray Davis, 186 carries, 1,066 yards, 13 touchdowns. Dane Key is their leading wide receiver, 6'3", 195 pounds, 553 yards, 5 touchdowns. I don't know if he has hit the transfer portal. That's what's so sad about now is you have to keep checking the transfer portal to see if someone's still there or not. It's that time of year, folks. It's insanity. Now, this game is going to be much closer to Clemson than it is to Kentucky. The Jacksonville Stadium is about 6 hours from Clemson, and it's much farther out from Kentucky. I haven't ran the Google Earth or Google Maps, on that one. But my point is, I think Clemson will travel to this game. And if you live in Columbia and you're a Clemson fan, I have friends of mine who are in Columbia. They're Clemson fans. People in the lower state of South Carolina. This is only a 3 or 4 hour game, 3 or 4 hour drive for you. So you would make it out. So I don't know how well Kentucky's going to travel for this one. Maybe they travel well. But the question is, who is Kentucky? I don't know who Kentucky is. Because I'm looking at a schedule and I'm saying, okay, you beat these really bad teams, 4 bad teams right in a row. And then you turn around and you got Florida off of your back. I know Florida is bad, but you have to remember that Florida still beat Tennessee this year. because Tennessee has a mental block with Florida in Gainesville. They just can't do it. You could bring Peyton Manning back in his heyday of the NFL and put him in charge of the Tennessee Volunteers. And I still don't know if they could do it. Not because of Peyton, but just because the team as a whole, just something happens. But there's something about Kentucky's numbers that just doesn't make sense. Well, Brian, the reason that we have an offense that doesn't look that good is because we had to play Georgia, and we had to play Tennessee, and we had to play Alabama. That's not a bad argument. But you have that loss there to South Carolina that leaves me scratching my head. And then when you lost games to Georgia, you got blown out. Playing close with Tennessee makes me look at you and go, oh man, that, Tennessee and Kentucky, they have that little thing going on up there. I can't say it's quite a rivalry like some games, but hey, you have a little rivalry going on. You played up for that when you lost by 6 points. Tennessee is not a bad team, but Tennessee is not a great team. We beat you last year. Yep. And you see what's happened to Clemson. Clemson's not been doing well. So, and I had to tell Tennessee fans that just because a guy who had been in college at that time for 5 years and only had one good game under his belt against them didn't mean that he was back. They told me I was salty. And after the dust clears on this season, I returned back to them to say I was right and you were wrong. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure out some of this stuff. You just have to open up your eyes, take off your team-colored shaded glasses, and you can see a lot. But Kentucky fans, if you hung on long enough, I want to throw you a bone. I want to throw you a bone, Kentucky fans, not because I am being sarcastic or condescending. I want to throw this bone to you because you deserve it. A question that you could accurately ask is, well, exactly who is Clemson? Now, this is where some of even my most faithful and supportive viewers are going to disagree with me. This is where people are going to start pulling out the comments like, Brian, why do you have to be so negative? Brian, that's in the past. Brian, trust Dabo like I'm trusting God or something. Once again, not a cult member. Clemson went 4-4 in the first 8 games of the season. Losing to Florida State in double overtime with Jordan Travis, a loss is a loss, but at least you can have some pride about it. When you get into a loss to Duke, at least Duke had a lot of talent on the team, and Riley Leonard was not on crutches. Remember, a quarterback being on crutches on the sideline is not a good thing. I have to remind a lot of people that because quarterbacks matter. Yeah, there's the rest of the team, but there's a reason why, I don't know, the Jacksonville Jaguars was wetting their drawers this past weekend thinking that Trevor Lawrence might not go because your quarterback matters. But what about the other team? Sorry, that's another video, another pot-stirring moment. Clemson lost to NC State and they lost to Miami, and neither team, they're not a juggernaut. So if you wanted to come in here and trash talk me and say, well, Brian, exactly what has your team done? I mean, yeah, the last 4 games you beat Notre Dame. That was good. You beat Georgia Tech pretty handily. Yeah, that was good. You beat North Carolina, a team that has first round and second and third round talent, especially on the offense. You beat them. You won. You played like trash offensively, not defensively. I will not put that on our defense. Our defense is fantastic. Offensively, you couldn't get the ball in the end zone. Yeah, we took a knee at the end, but come on, y'all. We played bad and beat South Carolina on the offensive side. We played bad. I am not sold that Clemson is fixed. I'm glad that Matt Luke has been hired. I don't know and didn't take the time to look it up. And at this moment, even if he is with the team right now working on the Gator Bowl, it's going to take more time than a month to fix a few different years of questionable offensive line play. So, Kentucky, if you wanted to throw it back in my face, you, as much as I might not like it, would be right. Who is Clemson? We're only 2 months removed from looking like lackeys. We're 2 months removed, if that, from Dabo making himself look bad with somebody prank calling him on public radio. And until we prove that we're past that point, I can't say too much about Kentucky until I can look at Clemson and say, you have to go win this ball game. Because winning is what you're supposed to do. Final thought, and I'm done. Kentucky, I don't buy completely into you. I think you're not a bad team. But once again, I think you could win this ball game. I believe you, Kentucky, you could win this ball game. All because of my questions with our offense. I have questions about our offense. Our number one wide receiver, given a game or two, I mean, what I mean by that is Tyler Brown will come out and play well. Then Bo Collins would play well. Bo Collins is transferring. He's not playing. You don't have to deal with a 6'3" guy who's been at the school for what, 3 years at least. So you don't have to deal with him. Our defense, even with the guys who are not going to play, our defense is still going to be a problem. Our front seven, even with Jeremiah Trotter out, is still going to look very, very good. You're going to have a problem. But the question I have with Clemson is their offense. Which offense is going to show up? The offense that ran the ball at will on Notre Dame? Or the team at the very last game we played, folks? Oh, it's a rivalry. They suck. I don't care if they are our rival. We couldn't get the ball in the end zone. Well, Brian, they took a knee at the end to be good sports, folks. I get what you're trying to say there, but they had an entire game. They couldn't get the ball in the end zone. The defense was playing lights out. Defense could score a touchdown. Offense couldn't. That's the question that I have. Both teams has a lot to prove. So I'm going to leave it at there. I want to know what you think. Put it in the comments section. Who do you think will show up? Why do you think I'm wrong? Tell me. I want to hear it. Why do you think I'm right? Why I'm right? Why do you think I'm both? I want to see it in the comments. Everybody, I appreciate you being on here. I hope that you will hit the subscribe button to see a bunch of people in here. Grafnar, he is a member of the Clemson Football Live channel. Thank you so much for being here. Tiger Paul Craven of the Mark Rogers Clemson Football Show. It's good to see you. Tiger in the Burrow in here. Maxwell Jameson, Logan C, Big Red. It's good to see all of you in here. Folks, if you want to support the channel on a monthly basis, hit the join button on the video below. If you're on an Apple product, you probably won't see it because for some reason the join button doesn't show up on an Apple product, but I do appreciate it. Please subscribe. It's the easiest way to, and free, to support the channel. You take care of yourself, and as always, go Tigers.